Hi, welcome to the small shed. Today I want to finish off my wife's workroom build. See you in a minute. Now, just a quick catch up on where we were with the room. I'd finished the main area down at the far end of the room and built a little unit underneath the door that we have to the airing cupboard, but none of the other units were even fixed, so the first job was to empty all those out and move the stuff so that I could actually fix them to the wall. They needed a batten mounted on the wall just to keep them away from the window by about 50-60 mil, so that when the door opened it didn't open onto the windowsill that protruded in. So I'd done that. The units were fixed. There's no great difficulty in fixing these. There's basically two screws at the top to a metal bracket, and then there's a cover plate that clips on afterwards. And again, then all of the stuff then had to be brought back into the room and put in the units when they'd been fixed. It's one of the problems with this build has been just purely and simply the logistics of moving stuff in and out of that room. Having done that, next job up was really to do the doors themselves. They needed cutting down in height, and again the little TS55 with an extractor on it is perfect in the house environment because it's not leaving any dust flying around anywhere. So I trimmed the doors down, rehung those. Fortunately I didn't have to move any of the hinge holes, and then just fitted the knobs that we had. My wife had bought some ceramic knobs to fit on them, so that basically finished the actual wardrobes themselves. That just then left me the problem of internal storage and some trays that we needed to do to have some sliding drawers in there. Right, we're getting on to the easier stuff now. We're getting most of the assembly and alteration done. Just want to take out this chest of drawers that's been put in here temporarily with fabric in. We've now got some drawer units on our third trip to IKEA with glass fronts on so she can see what's in them. Should be enough room there for 4 drawer units. If not, I can move that up so that we can get rid of this. This is relatively easy stuff now because it's just assembly rather than cutting about, and it's a good job I didn't cut these wardrobes down to 400 front to back, because I think it would have then meant that we couldn't have the drawer units in, because they're not quite so easy to chop about in this. The Malm ones that we use are easy to cut down, but these aren't so easy. So we get these out and assemble the drawer units. Now the drawer units are pretty easy to assemble. They come flat packed as does everything else. They're relatively cheap. I think they're about £25, and that for a drawer unit with soft close hinges is pretty good. The advantage of these is that they've got clear glass fronts on them so you can see what's inside. Not a great deal to assemble them. It's the bottom clips into the front with a sort of a rebate that's got an angle in it that clicks in. You then put the sides onto 2 of the metal dowel pins, put the cam locks on those, and then the back goes on with some of the plastic screws that they have that screw into the end of the MDF. Not the greatest construction in the world, but it works, and like our bedroom ones, they've survived for 20 years or so without any problem, and they are a nice soft close finish on them when they're done. So we put those in. Again, as with all these things, things changed over the course of the build. We've gone up from 4 to 6 in the end, but those have gone in well. And that was pretty much the main work done on the wardrobe. So next thing to do was to start and strip off all the wallpaper. I took the radiator off to clear the wallpaper behind it, and then found my nemesis water got to me again. I found that one of the valves was precariously mounted onto the copper pipe, and it was in danger of actually just coming off. So I had to quickly drain down the system and get that valve replaced. And then it was on to stopping the holes in the walls. Got my favourite, which is basically gyprock joint filler. It mixes up into a very fine filler that you can sand. And having done that, started to put things back together. I found that the radiator itself needed a new end piece fitting because the radiator valve had a different outlet. As with anything connected with water, it always goes wrong for me. But we soon got that done, and it was on to masking up the wardrobes themselves to protect the finish. Could have taken the doors off, but you've still got to mask over the openings, and it's likely that you'll get some damage on that then. The window frame is hardwood, so I gave that a clear coat just to sort of tidy that up, and then got on with the rest of the painting. It's basically only white gloss for the frames and skirtings. And the ceiling itself is white emulsion. I hadn't taken the paper off the ceiling, so that was a straightforward roller job, just to tidy up the ceiling and get 15 or 20 years of grime off it.
On the last word, he brushed back the brown paper and revealed a strip of plywood.
Normally I just use a roller, fairly small, like a radiator 4-inch roller for the ceiling, and then tidy up round the edges and into corners with a brush with a bit of emulsion on it. And it was on to wallpapering. Might do a separate video on wallpapering depending on how much of the video that I've got that's of any use. The problem is you're videoing into the light from the window, which can cause problems with exposure and that. But essentially I just marked a vertical on the wall just in from the window wall there, and started wallpapering from there, worked my way inwards. It's fairly straightforward pattern on it. It's something my wife chose. Basically it looks as if you've thrown a can of blue paint at the wall, but it seems to brighten the place up no end and looks the part. Now on from that, just a note, before I put the carpet down we needed to ply the floor, and you can see from this view how much this house has sort of shrunk away. The studs upstairs and the walls and the joists and basically the floors have shrunk quite considerably, and it's left about a 10mm gap all the way around the room, and that was why I'd lifted all the wardrobes up by that amount as well. They've plied the floor with a 6mm ply and then come in and done the carpet in the morning. That's something I've never had a go at, and I would never want to have a go at, I don't think. So here we are, pretty much complete now. Wife's just doing the curtains, curtain rails up. I've got to do a little bit of mastic around the window, and I've got to take the bottom off the door because the carpet's just been fitted. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, there's a pair of lights in the ceiling that I've got to wire into the main ceiling light. Other than that, we're finished and we can move on to something different. Mastic around the windows was just done with a bit of decorator's cork, water based, just to seal up some of the minor imperfections around the edges. The windows were put in about 15 or 20 years ago. I think I put them in, and there were one or two minor gaps between where I'd taken the old ones out and put the new ones in, and it just leaves you that little bit of gap between wall and window if you're not careful. So a very fine point, little bit of decorator's mastic, and we're out the way with that. Then it was down to just taking the bottom off the door to fit the door back. It's fairly easy to cut the bottom off, but then getting it back into position, most of the time that's all I use a chisel for. You just put a screwdriver on the floor, put the chisel at right angles to it and put your foot on it, it lifts the door up, but probably not what you meant to do. Then it was the two main lights to finish the job off, and that was the end of the job. Well, that's the room finished at last. I hope you enjoyed the video. Next week I think I shall probably do something different, making a little modelling tray for the model railway stuff. But in a week or so's time I will be doing a catch-up, just basically talking about the costs of it and get into this debate about whether you should have something custom made, whether you use IKEA or whether you just go out and buy normal wardrobes. There's a little bit of thought in that, and indeed I think it's worth having a look at how IKEA has sort of evolved over the years and how they've cheapened it down and possibly a step too far. We'll have a look at that anyway. Hope you enjoyed the video. Look forward to seeing you next week anyway, and we'll see you then. Bye.